Hi everyone. So today I will be talking about kitsch art, but more specifically vintage kitsch art from around 1970 to 1980. I know there are going to be probably a few people that are taken aback by how I called the 1970s and the 1980s vintage, but in my case today, I'm going to consider anything that is older than 20 years to be vintage. So now in my real life, I've been always kind of attracted to things that are tacky, maybe not typically would be called beautiful. So when I found this topic, I kind of jumped right into it. At first, I wasn't 100% sure what I was gonna do, but really diving deep into this project, I was able to make total sense of it. So moving along, um, I chose this topic to defend art, vintage kitsch art, from Scruton's explanation of how kitsch art is a disease of faith. So Scruton's opinion on kitsch is very closed-minded. He strongly believes that there is no thing or such thing as kitsch art before the 19th century. He believed that kitsch art was cheap, ugly, a waste of somebody's time, could be explained as even being tacky. Um, he believed art was supposed to link us to a common understanding, that art and the beauty of art was essential for human value, and without art, you wouldn't be able to have a valuable life. You wouldn't really have much in your life. He says that art should not be ironic, it should be affirming to something specific. And kitsch art specifically was bad for spiritual life. It didn't provide anything for the spiritual life. Um, to Scruton, art was supposed to be beautiful. It needed to be able to spark something spiritual within a person, and the birth of Venus was extremely beautiful to him. It made people feel disinterested interest. People were able to connect, have rational thoughts, deep thoughts about the piece of art. And the thoughts that they were having were not crude, grotesque. They weren't thoughts of murder or porn when they looked at this painting. Instead, they saw Venus's beauty and her femininity. Her face showed a sense of longing. Um, and to Scruton, it was a very beautiful piece of art. Now, talking about how Scruton kind of looks at vintage kitsch, he would definitely see it as a waste of time and a waste of space. He would describe it as probably ugly, tacky, just disgusting. He would loathe the idea of having vintage kitsch art pieces and statues around. He saw kitsch artists as an insult to real artists. He saw them as mocking, that they were mocking the techniques and skills that a real artist would use and a kitsch artist didn't have. So what might these works offer that Scruton overlooks? Well, they provide a sense of joy for the viewer. They're soft, playful. Lots of times the color choices of kitsch art were soft pastel colors. They would be seen as sometimes romantic to the viewer. They just weren't god awful. They were softer colors, but still very vibrant. Um, this piece of art reminds me of kind of like a Disney movie with how big their eyes are and the way that the faces are soft, like the features. So the works of art also offered a sense of whimsy. And when you think of Disney, you think of the greatest place on earth. You think of happiness, joy, and that's what these pieces of art would offer. So can something kitschy be still considered to carry aesthetic value? I believe yes, especially these two pieces of art. They often kitsch art are these vintage kitsch art pieces were made by hand by the artist. The little figurines and stuff like that were made by hand and mass produced, which was astonishing. It really showed that people wanted to put the time and effort. They were artists. They cared for what they wanted. Um, the colors, as I said before, were chosen as soft. They made people feel joyful, calm, happy. Um, Oftentimes, vintage kitsch like this would be depicted with animals and people, but these people and animals would have soft features like the eyes and the mouths. They weren't rigid or um, they were just very soft and innocent. But these pieces of art really played a big part in the time era. They belonged to somebody in history. They are almost mysterious to somebody. They're intriguing to think who had them before, who made them, what was going through their mind while they made them. Um, so, what might these works reveal about the limits of Scruton's stance? So I said before that Scruton would see kitsch as non-existent before the 19th century, so he would tend to focus on years long before modern times. He never seems to get out of his stuck ways of talking about art from the Renaissance, and he would talk about how these artists had skills and the knowledge that made them greater than any other artist. But I find that's flawed because Scruton really ignored the fact that people change, and over the years people would change how they see beauty is different between 10 years, let alone hundreds of years. So I believe he's too close-minded to understand that this art also had a purpose at the time, and that was to create joy. They might not have spiritual meaning, but it allowed people to forget small problems in their lives, even for just a moment. So my thesis would be Roger Scruton's idea on kitsch art is flawed. Vintage kitsch art is beautiful because it is able to make people feel emotions. The two specific pieces of art that are shown, though they are not traditional pieces of art, they are still significant to the era that they were created in. This isn't completely finished. This is just a outline, and I would definitely back this up by talking about how these artists put time and effort into these pieces of art, even though they are considered kitsch. So that is kind of all I have. These are my references. They are just kind of the references to the images and the definition of vintage. So, thank you for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed.